Did you know that your breakfast and your chair have something in common? That your clothes and a cat have something in common? Can you guess what it is? They're all made from chemical elements. These 94 naturally occurring chemical elements make up everything on Earth. Elements are the fundamental building blocks that can't be broken down into smaller pieces. In another example of elements, a child might put together building blocks in one way to make a rocket, or the same blocks in another way to build a castle. Same wooden blocks arranged in different ways. The building blocks of mathematics are numbers and symbols. The building blocks of reading and writing are letters and symbols. Put them together in the right way, and you have sentences, paragraphs, and books. The world of arts also has identified elements, building blocks. Theater, dance, music, they all have their own lists of elements. The world of visual art has identified 7 elements, or building blocks, as well. If you look around the room right now, I bet you see colors. Colors can be divided into color families like warm colors, red, yellow, orange. Cool colors, blue, green, some purples. And then neutral colors like black, white, and gray. Do you have colors that you love? Now look around again. I bet you could also find some dark objects or areas in the room and light objects in the room. Dark objects might be dark blue, dark brown, or black. Light objects might be yellow, pink, or white. Look around. Are you seeing colors and values? Color and value are 2 of the building blocks, or elements, of visual art. If you put your finger in the air and then move your finger around, you're making a line. You may think of a line as only being on a flat surface, like a piece of paper, but lines can exist in space as well. Now put your finger in space again, remember where you start, and begin to make a line away from that starting point. Maybe your line is straight, or maybe it's smooth, but eventually return to the point that you started from. Can you see what you just made? A shape. Sometimes shapes have straight sides and sometimes they're curved, but line and shape are 2 more of the building blocks, or elements, of visual art. Touch your shirt. Now touch your desk or your chair. Do they feel exactly the same or a little different? You are feeling differences in texture. Texture can be something you feel or something that you only see. This desk looks like rough wood, for example, but it's just a printed texture, which is sometimes called visual texture. The room you're in has a lot of 3-dimensional space. Some things take up a lot of space, while other things don't. Some objects are in front of or overlapping other objects. You can tell they're overlapping because the closer object is hiding some of the farther objects. Space also exists in 2 dimensions, such as a piece of paper. When creating an artwork on paper, we can decide if we want to use a lot of space or very little. We can also overlap objects, even in 2 dimensions. Space is the 6th element of visual art. Finally, objects that are 3-dimensional have a special element named just for them. That's the element of form. Form is the shape of a 3-dimensional object. The word shape usually refers to 2-dimensional objects, while form is the similar word for 3-dimensional objects. The shape of a three-dimensional object is called its form. Sometimes we want to represent a three-dimensional object in two-dimensional space, like on a piece of paper. In this case, we say we are giving the illusion of form, and we usually accomplish that through changes in value. So that was all 7 elements of visual art. See if you and your elbow partner can remember all 7. Count on your fingers and see how many you can recall. In this art project, you're going to use 6 of the 7 elements. Since the project is a flat or two-dimensional project, we won't use form in the three-dimensional sense. We might make the illusion of form. We will practice working with textures made from lines, creating shapes that overlap across the space of the paper, and adding colors of different values. Let's start with textures made from lines. The first texture you'll make is called a hatch pattern. This is made from short line segments that are all parallel. They all have the same angle. The second texture will be the cross-hatch pattern. It's made from 2 sets of hatch patterns that overlap each other at some angle. You can see these patterns in real life and in artwork if you look for them. Can you find both of them in the artwork on a dollar bill? Draw your hatch and cross-hatch patterns now. The next texture is made from repeating shapes. You can repeat small triangles as shown in the example, or you can repeat another shape, say rectangles. Make the shape small, fill the space, and see what you think of this texture. The next pattern we call pebbles. It's made from repeating a circle shape using different size circles. Start by drawing in really large circles. I'll call them boulders. You might only be able to fit in just a few of those in the space. Next, we'll draw in the medium-sized circles. Maybe we could call those rocks. Fit them around the boulders, touching but not overlapping. Next, we'll draw in dozens of small pebbles fitting around the rocks, and finally the gravel or the smallest circles around the pebbles. There are 2 ways to make the scribbly texture we call wool. I'll divide the space so I can show you both ways. The first example is a circular scribble of overlapping circles. Keep overlapping the circles until you achieve a gray texture. The other version of wool or scribble is made with more of a up and down, left and right movement. Does it look exactly the same or slightly different than the circular scribble? Which do you prefer? You'll get to choose which of these 6 visual textures you want in your project when you work with your group later. You'll see in the example on your page, there are 3 overlapping rectangles. These overlapping rectangles created new shapes, a kite and a small quadrilateral that could be called a trapezium since none of the sides are parallel. Choose a texture from below and add it to any one of the 5 shapes. Do you want to add the same texture to another area? I think I'll add the same texture to this area. Now we're going to add colors of different values to our shapes. Choose 3 oil pastels from the same color family. For example, I might choose red, orange, and yellow. This gives me a dark, medium, and light version of the warm colors. Similarly, I could choose blue, green, and yellow-green to have different values in the cool colors. If you like the neutral colors, black, white, and gray is a good starting point. If a student chooses red, orange, and then blue, that might show a confusion since red and orange are warm colors and blue is a cool color. Choose your 3 colors and check that everyone around you is clear on the idea of staying within the same color family. I'm going to use the dark on the edge, light in the middle approach to coloring these shapes. This might give the illusion of form to our shapes. I'm going to start by coloring around the first rectangle in dark blue. I can use a blocker piece of cardboard to easily color right up to the edge without having to be especially careful about stopping, since the cardboard will do that for me. Notice how I've shaded about 1/3 of the way into the center with this dark blue. Do the same on your paper using your darkest color. Next, I'm going to color with a lighter color blue. Notice how I'm using little circles as I color. A common mistake is to have a sharp line right there where I change from one color to the next. By overlapping and applying a light pressure with the light blue over the dark blue, notice how that line goes away. This is the effect we're after. I think for my last color, I'm going to use white. White is a neutral color that will work with any color family. Here's the sharp line that you want to avoid, and by overlapping the medium blue with the white, that sharp line disappears, and you get a gradation or fading effect. Continue to color the other shapes. Stay within the color family to create a unified image. For example, I might use greens in the second area. But if I used reds, that would be a drastic shift from the cool color family and would create an ununified image. While variety is sometimes a great way to make an interesting composition, we are practicing unity in this project. Go ahead and finish this 3-rectangle example, and you know you're ready for the next phase of this project when you can draw textures, understand blending oil pastels, know the 7 elements of visual art, and can see how overlapping shapes create new shapes.